Hit the change room. We're about to level up.
Hello and welcome to the Change Room. Here at Prolific Fitness, we are on a mission to help people achieve life-changing body transformations, and this is no different. This is an extension of that, and so I'm super excited for today's episode. It's episode number 2. We've got a really meaty topic, and this is actually one that comes straight from real-life clients that have been struggling with this one. I mean, it's something that a lot of clients have struggled with in the past, and I can't wait to kind of dive into it. Now, if you're listening, obviously you're listening, you may have heard that hopefully the audio quality is a bit better. We've got a new mic. We've got the new camera whipped out. We've got new flooring here. I've got some heaters in the gym. It's definitely coming along here at Prolific, which I'm super excited about. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. Today we are here to talk about nutrition. Okay? And this one, the idea is that by the end of this episode, I want you to be able to walk away with the ability to be able to navigate your nutrition to get results even when life is complicated and chaotic, because life isn't perfect, and if you're expecting it to be perfect, to be able to stay on top of your nutrition and all that, it's just going to be a nightmare of a journey for you. So let's dive into it today, okay? If you're watching, if I'm looking at my laptop every now and then, it's because I've got tons of notes here and I just want to make sure I don't forget anything. So, I mean, here's the big thing, right? Like, does it sound too good to be true when life gets crazy to stick to your diet? Because for a lot of people it does. I mean, I've seen it all the time that people can, everything goes well, you're sticking to your nutrition, you're sticking to your meals, your meal prep's good, you've got the recipes going, but then something happens, you travel, you go away, you get sick, life gets busy, there's school holidays, whatever it might be, there's something that triggers it, and then people inevitably, they miss a day, they miss 2, and then they're falling off, okay? And so what is actually happening here? What's going on when you can only stick to a new diet or stick to a nutrition approach when everything's perfect, okay? To illustrate this point, the client that I had came to me after diving into sessions, doing a great job with sessions, but they said, you know what, I'm behind on nutrition, and I'm so frustrated and I'm so annoyed. And I said, talk to me about what's going on, what's not working. And they said that they have had family members in and out of hospital, and it's been a crazy couple of weeks, and they just can't get to the meal prep, and so because of that they're behind and they're not feeling like they're on track with stuff. And I think it's a really important misconception to get on top of, is that people feel that if I cannot be perfectly tracking meals or perfectly doing this, that it's all a waste, it doesn't count for anything, where actually the opposite is true, okay? This is the idea that you're behind because life is busy and you can't do X, Y, Z is a misnomer, it's a misconception, because if you are waiting for life to be not busy, before you can do any of this stuff, you're going to be falling off all the time, okay? Look, I had a similar kind of thing in terms of, I competed in bodybuilding in 2019. And prior to that competition, I actually spent 18 months eating every meal to the gram. So six meals a day, everything eaten to the gram. I used to spend hours prepping every Sunday to make 28 meals for the week. I would freeze them. I would wake up before first thing in the morning. I'd wake up at like 4 a.m. to make my first meal. That's how intense it was. And it was a really interesting process, because when I hit that show, I did the show, I loved it. At the end of that, I actually couldn't stick to a diet or any kind of meal approach for like 4 or 5 months after, which is in such huge contrast to the extreme level of discipline I had prior. And I couldn't work out at the time, and I wish someone would have pulled me aside and said, hey, there is actually a way to get on top of this big kind of question mark of, I can't be at 100%, what do I do in between? And I think that is what's actually going on here, is the trap that it's a switch in a lot of people's brain. Either I'm on or I'm off. I'm doing the nutrition or I'm not. I'm on track or I'm not. Whereas we got to frame it. It's not an all or nothing game, and this is the big problem. This is the thing that we're going to dive into in the next few minutes is it's not an all or nothing game. People think either I'm 100% on or I'm off. Either I'm on my meal plan or I'm doing nothing. And that is where your issues are going to lie. For 2 reasons. One is life is messy. We know that. Second one is, from a long-term point of view, if you have a strict approach that has to be strict or it doesn't work, think this through. Is that going to work for the next 30 years of your life? If you're on a meal plan, are you going to eat strictly on a meal plan for the next 30 years of your life, and you're not going to take vacations, and you're not going to be too stressed to do that, or you're not going to get sick, or family member's not going to have a health issue that's going to pull you off track? Obviously, that's not the case. So we got to find a way that you can eat when things are great, but then also as things start to get more chaotic, how do you stick to it? Okay, and that's what we're going to dive into today. I think the big metaphor that I want to kind of get across to you here is that it's a tool belt. This approach to nutrition is like a tool belt, and there's different tools for different jobs. Now, in this case, a meal plan is a tool for the job, but it's not the only tool, okay? And so understanding that there are other tools in your tool belt, so when life gets hectic, we need to start reaching for those tools. So what I've actually done here is I've actually split the week or the types of weeks into 3. We've got routine weeks, which is kind of weeks that you can be disciplined, and they're kind of par for the course normal weeks, right? We've got busy weeks, which for a lot of people actually makes up the majority of their weeks as well. And that's where a week where it's actually hard to stay on track with these kind of things. And then the third type of week is a chaos week, a chaotic week. How do you stay on top of things when nothing's going right and everything's in the air? And when there's actually different approaches for each of these. By the end of this, I want you to be able to navigate all 3 of these kind of week levels to actually be able to make sure that you can be consistent through this journey, okay? Now, when we dive into this, I want you to pay attention to a few things. There's some overarching concepts that are really important, and you'll notice this across them. The first one is that in all of these kind of cases, we want to make sure that we have low calories, high protein, high fiber, okay? Because there's a few reasons. Low calories, so low calorie density. Foods have different calories per 100 grams. Some foods, like peanut butter, is 580 calories per 100 grams. If you look at something like a lettuce and cucumber and tomatoes, they're like 15 to 18, I think, calories per 100 grams. Very different amount in calorie density. You are looking for foods that are lower in calorie density. Even, here's a good example, 2 versions of carbs that have different calorie densities. You have bread, which is, it's about 250 calories per 100 grams, and you've got pumpkin, which is about 26 calories per 100 grams. So they're about 10 times different in calorie density. So you can have 10 times the volume of pumpkin than you can bread for the same amount of calories, and they are both carb sources. And so that is just a very quick, we could go spend hours on calorie density alone, but that's a very quick idea of how different foods have different calorie densities, okay? So low calorie density, high protein, high fiber. Protein is going to allow you to build muscle, build metabolism, be satiated because it's slow digesting. Fiber also helps with digestion, and it will keep you satiated as well. So in this case, always just think, when you're looking at meals, high protein, high fiber, low calorie density. Now, what that looks like on a plate or in your eating style is usually people are overeating carbs and fats and under-eating protein and veggies. So as a general rule of thumb of how you apply what I just said, generally what we're looking for, every meal should have protein and veggies and usually less carbs and fats, which if you take the extremes, obviously we know a chicken salad is a good option because it's high in, the reason it is it's high in protein and veggies, and the reason that we would look at something like a pizza as a bad option is because it's actually low in protein and veggies and high in carbs and fats. It's the exact opposite end of the spectrum of like a chicken salad. That's why they're on the extremes. We know that. That's actually why they are like that, okay? And so what I want you to do, as we go through these, I will blabber on no more. Let's get into it. As we get into this, I want you to pick from each of these tiers of weeks one method that you actually want to apply, and then we'll kind of go from there, because I want you to build the tool belt and I want you to pick one of these things from each week. So the first type of week is a routine week, when things are going well. Now, there are a couple of kinds, I've put in a couple of kinds of ways to eat here. First one is actually meal prepping. Everyone knows how to meal prep, and so if you want to be more structured and you want a structured approach, a meal prep is a good way to go about this. Now, you can prep once a week, you can prep twice a week, you can prep 3 times a week. I think the biggest concept here when you're approaching meals is, at very least, there's the concept of cook once, eat twice, okay? So if you're cooking once, don't cook once for one meal. At very least, double the portions and make 2 meals out of that thing. You can have it for lunch the following day. You can make a second dinner, that kind of thing. Now, if you take it to the extreme, that's what meal prep is. Meal prep is the idea of you can cook once for half the week or the full week, and that just takes that to the extreme. But my first piece of advice is, if you're cooking for every single meal that you have without like doubling up on portions, just bulk up the meals and have a leftover option for yourself. It saves heaps of time and energy, okay? Now, when it comes to meal prepping, the fundamentals. First one is calendar block the shop, calendar block the prep, because what inevitably happens is other things come up and they take over and you end up not getting it done. So that's the first thing, calendar it. Now, in terms of this, actually get a bit of variety in what you do. I would pick at least a couple of options for protein, a couple of options for a carb base, and a couple of options for veggie variety, so that you don't have the same thing every meal, every day, and go from there, okay? There's some things that help with this. Air fryers are amazing, and also like rice cookers and things like that. They can make your life a whole lot easier when it comes to prepping, because it's just so easy to kind of leave it in and let it do its thing pretty easily, okay? The other option in terms of the routine weeks, or the way to have like a structured way to eat, would be something like a meal delivery service. I know a lot of people, the reason I put this in, a lot of people I know use these, and so they'll be like My Food Bag, HelloFresh, anything like that. Now, this actually does take some mental load off of you in terms of what you're doing. You just need to make sure they adhere to the calories or the kind of amounts or the portions that you're actually after. One thing to note with these kind of options is that usually they're under serving protein. So that's the one big thing to realize. Actually, most people are under eating protein quite significantly on a daily basis in terms of actually the goal of being able to build muscle and metabolism. That is actually the goal. So in this case, most people are drastically, a lot of people I chat to, eating 3 to 4 times less than they should be, kind of deal. That's actually how significant it is. Now, a lot of these things, if they have less than about 25, 30 grams in a serving, I would actually recommend adding protein serves to that to bulk it up a bit. But they are actually a great option, these meal delivery services, okay? So that is the stricter option, or kind of the planned out option. And you can have other variations of this, like you can take a meal plan and use it as a meal template and then just swap out meals or portions as you go. That's another way you can approach that. But let's go into the busy weeks, the weeks where things are kind of ramped up. It's hard to stick to it. It's not chaotic, but it's actually really hard to stick to one. And in this one, I'll tell you what I do personally at the end of this one, but I want you to pick one from this tier as well. So in this case, the first one is actually calorie tracking or macro tracking. So this is one that it's more technical, it's more structured, but and so that freaks a lot of people out and they don't want to do it. For a lot of people, it actually gives them freedom back. So the idea with calorie tracking, only do it if it gives you freedom back. If you feel like it's making your life harder, don't do it. It's actually the wrong approach. But for a lot of people, it allows them flexibility and they go, I can't do this. I'm just going to have something different and track it, and I know the amounts are going to be right. That's actually the whole point of it. So in this case, how do you do this? You have an app. MyFitnessPal is an obvious example because it's the most common one out there. And the idea is you're just tracking foods. Now, there's no such thing as perfect calorie tracking. It doesn't exist. It's all a bit of a variety. Some things are like 20% up or 20% down. So it's all kind of estimating anyway. At the end of the day, there's no such thing as a perfect calorie tracking when you're using these kind of apps. But do your best. That's my biggest advice on this one, is that you want to get there most of the way. Being perfect on tracking is just going to screw you up. If you're like, I have to be perfect and I don't know if this is right, go for the closest thing. If you can't find it, it's all right. Close enough is going to work, okay? One thing that's really cool to do about this one is actually, even if your plan isn't long-term to be on a calorie tracking approach, you can actually use calorie tracking or macro tracking as a way to get the amounts right for when we actually go to something more flexible. So even if you're going to do like a hand portion guideline or something like that later on, if we actually start with this kind of approach here, and you can actually see how much food is in this many calories or in this many grams of protein, it means when you go to a flexible option later on, you have the peace of mind of knowing I've actually tracked that, so I know how much is in that. So for a lot of people, what we'll do is we'll start them, even if they're going to move to like a more flexible option down the line, we start them with a meal plan, or if they want calorie tracking, because at very least they know what the right amount of those foods are before they make it more flexible, and give themselves a bit more kind of leeway in their approach, okay? Perfect. So next one is the flexible plate template. So this is just the idea of like looking at a plate and knowing what fraction of it, and this is a very flexible one, and this is one that may not work for everyone in terms of it's the opposite end in terms of how technical it is or how structured it is for like the calorie tracking, because the calorie tracking is very technical or very like measured. This is the opposite. So in this case, the idea is like half the plate being veggie, half the plate being lean protein, half the plate being a carbohydrate. And when we say carbohydrate, it's not just like lollies, you know what I mean, or like popcorn. Like have something that's actually a good, complex carbohydrate that's not too processed, okay? Now, in this case, in terms of fats, you have, and this is the same with the hand portion guideline, is thumb-size fats. So even with the different options on the plate, which is a half plate veggies, a quarter lean protein, a quarter smart carbs, then you can actually have a thumb-size fat added to that as well. Keep in mind, olive oil is a fat, butter is a fat. So if you're cooking in those kind of things, you have to actually count them as a fat option. Unfortunately, they don't. You can't just add extra peanut butter to a meal after using oil and butter. You see what I mean? Like, it actually counts as part of it. So, cool. All right, and this actually is a really cool option, because if you're in a restaurant, you can actually then be flexible with this. If you're out at a party or anything like that and you don't know what to go for, having an idea of portion amount and like fractions of those will actually make it a lot easier for you when you're being flexible. And that actually leads really nicely into a similar approach. And actually, this is the one that we use a lot for our clients, is hand portion guidelines. Now, there is actually much more detail about hand portion guidelines. We actually came across an exceptional infographic online that we didn't make, but we came across it, that explains really, really, really nicely how to actually do hand portion guidelines. You can Google it, but if you want, go to our Instagram, message us at prolificfitness.co, prolificfitness.co on Instagram, and just ask us for the infographic, and we can send you a link to the infographic that we found. I couldn't have explained it better than they did, so if you want that one, definitely reach out to us. But just to give you an idea, you use your hands as a guideline. So a palm is the protein measure, a cupped ham is the carb, a fist is the veggie amount, and a thumb is the fat amount. Now, in this case, how many servings do you have per day depends on the person. So, for example, for men, it might be like 6 servings of protein, 6 of carbs, 6 of veggies, and 2 of fats, for example. You know what I mean? For women, it might be 4, 4, 4, 1. So the idea of but a general rule of thumb can be for 2 palms of protein, 2 cupped handfuls of carbs, 2 fists of veggies, and 2 thumbs of fats for an average man for an average meal. But this totally depends. If how large you are, how active you are, what the macro split is. So this is one that I would just recommend, if either looking into it, reach out to us, or just Google it, and there's a bit more detail. But this is a really great method for actually learning how to get on top of this stuff here, okay? Perfect. You've also probably heard of the 80-20 rule, the idea that 80% of your foods are nutrient dense and 20% are fun. This is a really fast one, the idea that you can don't think of cheat meals, but to think of trying to eat whole foods most of the time. So that's more of a principle than a fully fledged meal approach, but if you're doing nothing else, at least do that, okay? And then obviously, this is the one that I do. This is called protein plus weigh-ins. So this is a very flexible option as well. And this is the idea that you're not tracking a lot. All you're doing is you step on a scale once a day to see what your weekly average is doing, so you know if your weight's going up or down. That actually gives us a bit of context about, are we on track with the weight or not, and we know if the calories are too high or too low, because our weekly average will be going up. The only macronutrient we track is protein, because protein is the most important thing. Out of everything that you could be tracking nutrition-wise or making sure you're getting right, we've got to make sure we're getting the calorie amount right and the protein amount right. The reason being is the calorie amount being right will mean that we hit the right change in pace of weight loss or change in weight. That's going to be dictated by the calorie amount. You building muscle and building strength and being satiated and long term making sure that you're not affecting your metabolism, that's protein. The strength, the mobility, all of that in the muscle building is aided by protein. So the idea of those two being the pillars for everything that we do, protein and calories, is the goal. So this is actually how I do it. I actually essentially just make sure I hit my protein goals for the day, and I track my weight on a daily basis. And the two of those things then informs, do I need to change do I need a bit more food or a little bit less food? But I just make sure I get enough protein, and that's it. It's super flexible. And right now, because I'm so busy on a daily and weekly basis, I don't have time to be tracking everything. So, and it works for me really well. So that's proof that you don't actually have to be perfect on a meal plan, structured, tracking every calorie for this to be a successful journey, okay, which is really cool. It's actually very freeing once you realize that, okay? Now, what do you do when things are chaotic? This is actually the biggest thing. When you have a busy week and you have no breathing time to even do what I've been talking about, you don't have the mental space for it, you don't have, things are crazy, you're traveling, you're, stressed out your head, and you don't know what to do. These are some approaches that you can take in the chaos weeks, okay? And so the first one is supermarket combos, 2-minute supermarket combos. I think this is a really helpful one, is knowing that there are options you can just grab from supermarkets and run with them. So a good example is that you just need you deli, you'll be able to get meats. We're looking at, buying chicken breast, being able to buy lean beef, things like that. Find them at delis, grab them. You can also go for tuna cans. Don't have too much of those because the mercury amount of them is, can be a lot. You can even go for this. Look, again, it's better than nothing. The sodium amount and there's preservatives and things, but you can get those packets of pre-cooked chicken, like shredded chicken, in the section with all the yogurts and the what else is in that section? All the yogurts. This yogurt section. There'll be meat that's already pre-cooked. Yes, it's got preservatives. Yes, it's got sodium. It's not ideal, but in this case, it's better than nothing. You can get your protein in, and I've done this plenty. Now, pairing it with a carb, a good example is just getting packet rices. Easy way to do it. You can go to the deli and get, if they have roasted stuff or any kind of potatoes or any other carb sources, go for it. And then pairing it with some veggies. Now, you can actually just have raw veggies. That's my favorite approach, is just grabbing, cucumbers, tomatoes, chopping them up real quick, or even just eating them if you want, just eat them whole. But you can also get salads, and just be careful with salads because the salad dressing actually makes up the vast majority of the calories in a salad. So that's just a bit of a thing there, is just be careful of salad dressing, because when salads come with salad dressing, the salad itself might be really low, but you add dressing to it and then suddenly it's a ridiculous amount, okay? That's the first one. So second one is meal replacement, shakes or bars. So this is protein bars and protein shakes. Again, it's not an ideal. We don't want you to be having protein bars in place of having whole meals. But I am very, very, very guilty of this. And look, protein shakes is not bad for you. I would much rather you go for a protein shake as a snack than go eat something bad. Protein shakes, on the whole, are gonna be fine for you, in moderation. Same with protein bars. Protein bars are a little bit more like preservatives and things like that in them. But again, I would much rather you go to that. It's got protein in it. It's going to keep you satiated. It's going to stop you going for other food options. I have protein bars all the time. I have protein shakes quite a bit as well. And so it's one of those things where it just makes it more convenient to hit your protein goals on a daily basis than having more chicken breast cooked up and ready to go. So I'm absolutely, if that's going to help you with that one, go for gold, okay? Restaurant, knowing restaurant and takeaway options. Now, this is the same thing. It's the same concept in terms of what are you looking for? You're looking for things that have lean protein base, more veggies in them, and less carbohydrates. And so in this case, I'll give you some examples. If you wanted to, everyone knows you can go get salads. You can go to Pita and get a salad. You can go to Subway and get a salad. You can go to anywhere and just ask for a salad, and I'm sure they'll make you a salad. So obviously we know there's a good option. Now, if you wanted something that was a bit more meaty, or not meaty, carby than that, a good example would be, instead of getting a Subway, a good substitute is instead of getting a foot-long Subway, get a 6-inch Subway and get double protein on it, double meat on it. Obviously that's a smarter idea, because it means the percentage of protein to carbs is much better, right? You can go to Burger Fuel and get chicken. Is it Burger Fuel? Yeah, Burger Fuel, and get chicken fenders, which are literally just chicken tenders. There's some fat on there, but it's just literally fat and chicken. Not that bad. Pita is a great option. Turkish food tends to be a good option if you go for on salad, if you can, but you can also go for on rice if you want some more carbs in there. So it depends on how much carb you want in there. If you've got a busy day, or you're training hard on that day, or moving a lot, then you can get stuff with carbs, but make sure they're whole foods, you know what I mean? And so we actually have a guide on eating like this. Reach out to us and we can send it to you, you know what I mean? But even if you go to an Indian restaurant, there are foods that are going to be higher in carbs and fats. You could also go for an option that's just one of the meat dishes on the side, and just have a meat dish, which I do all the time when I'm going to a type of cuisine that tends to be a bit more carby or fatty, okay? Here's a cool idea, the idea of calorie banking. And this is the idea that your calories don't have to be had consistently throughout the day or throughout the week. Now, this is not the idea of starving yourself to binge. Don't do that. What I'm saying is that if you know you're going to be eating more in the evening because you're at an event, you can actually eat less carbs throughout the day and allocate those calories and those carbs to the meal in the evening. If you know you're going to have a couple of big social events in the weekend, you can bank those calories by having slightly less carbs throughout the week. Don't starve yourself. Still have protein, still have veg, still keep a healthy diet, but just don't go starving yourself, but have less carbs throughout the week so that you can actually have a bit more leniency. And some people that really struggle on the weekend, we will intentionally make Monday to Friday lower on the carb amount, because the overall calorie amount then becomes lower. And then on the weekend, they're allowed to. They can be a bit more flexible, and the overall week is still not a net positive in terms of calorie amount. Same thing goes for on a daily basis. So that's a really cool way to approach that. Another way you can actually do this too is just before you go out to a social event, eating some protein and some veggies to fill up before you go out, so that when you're out there, you can still eat, but you're not going to be that hungry. And so the food that you eat, you're not going to be able to eat as much of it. Just a food for thought, okay? Same with traveling, do the same thing. Traveling, just make sure you eat enough protein, eat enough veggies. If you fill up on protein and veggies, when you're traveling, you can actually eat very flexibly, because the amount of calories that are coming from quote unquote bad food or just calorie dense foods are going to be less, because there's less space in your stomach to be able to eat those kinds of foods, okay? Awesome. We also have like time restricted eating or eating windows, like intermittent fasting. For some people this works really well for them, so they won't, like if they're really busy mentally, it's easy to just not eat for the first 6 hours of the day or whatever. You can try that. Again, it's not my first recommendation, but it's something that's an honorable mention if you know it works for you, okay? But please don't binge and crave, and so don't starve yourself and then crave and then binge later. That's not what we're talking about. Make sure that you have, good spaced meals throughout the day. Cool. As always, to wrap up those 3 levels, you've got your routine weeks, you've got your busy weeks, and you've got your chaos weeks. In each of them, the overall concept is we're trying to eat more protein and veg and less carbs and fats. If you can just keep that in your mind, when I'm looking at a meal, whether you do hand portion guidelines or tracking calories or do a meal plan or plate portions, doesn't matter. Less carbs and fats and more protein and veggies is going to keep you satiated, keep you full. It's going to stop cravings and spikes of energy coming up and dumping. It's going to allow you to build muscle, build metabolism, digestion stays healthy. That's all super, super, super important, okay? Now, let's get into the part where it's the behavior change science. None of what we've just talked about matters if you self-sabotage along your journey. And I see so many people that know these tools, or they know different kind of options they can go for, but it doesn't matter, because they will beat themselves up and then they'll self-sabotage. And who cares about the perfect meal plan or the right flexible approach if you can't stick to it because of the fact that you're self-sabotaging. So I want you to think about which one of these might help you the most, okay? The first one is an implementation intention. That's a mouthful, okay? And so this is one that if you've ever read the book Atomic Habits, I do recommend that. Atomic Habits is one of those books that I've read probably 2-3 times, and we studied it to kind of get a bunch of info about that. It's a James Clear book. Amazing book, but he talks about the idea of implementation intentions, that people were, what's the stat, in terms of how much more likely they were, the adherence to a habit, I think, don't quote me on this, find the stats, it's very easy to find, went from 20 to 30% to I think 80 to 90% on a habit when there was an implementation intention. I'm going to do this on this day and this time, right? Now, in this case, we can actually apply implementation intentions to if this, then, so if then. If this happens, then I do this. The idea is figure out for you when you fall off track, what is the trigger? Is it when I'm busy? Is it when I travel? And this is actually one of the first things I ask people is where are we falling off? What time? What day? Is it a stress level? Is it a time of day? Is it a place? Is it a situation? Figure out what that thing is, because if we know this is when this happens, then if you pre-decide what the course of action is, then there's no cognitive or mental effort needed at the time when you're low on cognitive effort or ability to make good decisions to decide what you need to do. So that's the big thing, is just make sure ahead of time, if this happens, then I'm going to do this. If you know ahead of time how you're going to manage that situation, when that situation arises, you just run the program that you've actually created for yourself, and you don't have to put any energy into it, okay? So a good example of that is if I don't have time to go get lunch, I will then go to the supermarket and grab this. Or if I don't even have time to do that because I'm busy on this day, I'm going to make sure I have a protein shake that I'm going to go to instead. And I know that ahead of time. If I don't have if I don't have time in the evening to cook for my family, then I will go to one of these 3 restaurants or places to eat out, because I know these options are are good and they're going to help me get to my goals. Even knowing that ahead of time makes a big difference, okay? The next one is environment design. Now, this is the idea you want to reduce friction to good choices. So if you're trying to pick up a habit of being able to have more protein in your day, then make sure you have good protein options at hand, or you know what they are. If you're trying to reduce, the number of times you go towards chocolate, don't stock it at your house. Even better, don't keep it at the front of your pantry. So I think the biggest thing is make the friction to good habits lower and make the friction to bad habits larger. It just makes it much easier to stay on track. What gets measured gets managed. So the idea is you need to be tracking something, okay? Now in this case, what are we tracking? It could be anything. It could be tracking your weight on a daily basis to get the weekly average. It could be tracking the protein amount, and it could be that you're tracking it in a meal tracking app. It could just be that you're tracking how many servings you're having of something per day. So you can be tracking, the biggest things would be your weight. It could be tracking protein amount. It could be tracking calorie amount. It could be tracking veggies. If you want to do a flexible approach, just track protein and veggies. If you want to be stricter, you can track your macronutrients in a calorie tracking app. Whatever it is, make sure you're tracking some sort of number to keep on top of it. This is a massive one. This one is self-compassion over self-flagellation. The idea is, if you beat yourself up for falling off track or stepping off track, you are going to make this journey harder for yourself. There is nobody that does it perfectly. So people have it in their mind that they have to be perfect, and when they're not, they beat themselves up. And here's why, from a scientific point of view, that actually really screws you up. When you beat yourself up for this, it does a couple of things. It raises your adrenaline, but it boosts cortisol. Now, cortisol affects your prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain responsible for making decisions. So the irony is you've made a bad decision, or you've had a bad strategy or a system, and you beat yourself up for it, which just makes it harder to make good decisions. You see where the issue comes in? We cannot have you having that reaction to messing up. So I need you to reframe this journey. When you misstep, don't want you to look at it as you have made an error or you've made a mistake, because it's so easy. People are so hard on themselves. It's much more beneficial to look at it as, where is my system, or where's my process less than ideal? Where do I need to tweak stuff? Obviously, if I'm getting stuff wrong, there's somewhere that it's too complicated, too challenging, because I can tell you, after years of helping people get on top of their goals, people are much more a product of their circumstance than you realize. People go, I'm lazy, I'm this, I'm that. At the end of the day, I reckon the vast majority of the time, people are the way that they are, or in the situation they are, because their environment design's not right. They don't know how to approach the thing. They haven't got the right systems or the habits or the intention or the mental frames. It's actually much more about the systems and the processes than you just being bad at this thing. So if you just say, I'm bad at this thing, that's sure, okay, maybe it helps you take on the responsibility of it, but it's not a solution. That doesn't actually help you get to your goal. Instead of beating yourself up, look at where the system has failed and try solve the system. It's easier for you mentally, it's a more enjoyable process, and you're actually going to be more successful at it scientifically if you do it that way. So here's the checklist to wrap all of what we did, and I appreciate you sticking all the way through. You guys are legends. I'm hoping that's super helpful, what we've been through today, but here's kind of the cliff notes. Number one is have busy and chaos week options for food, not just a meal plan or when things are perfect. Make sure you have something to fall back on, okay? Prioritize protein and veggies in each meal. Make sure that protein and veggies are the priority for you when it comes to how you're structuring a meal, okay? I want you to pre-decide 3 emergency meals. So you need to be able to, when things get crazy, what can you source in 5 minutes? Is it protein bars? Is it pita? Is it a supermarket option? Have stuff at hand. Have it in the car. Have it in the work pantry. I don't know, but just have stuff on hand that makes it easy for you to get fallback options, emergency fallback options when you need them. Okay. 4th one is set the if-then plans for your derail triggers. So if you know that you fall off when this thing happens, set an implementation intention that when this situation happens, I'm going to do this. You know what I mean? Like, if I know I make bad decisions when I'm stressed at 3 p.m., then I'm going to go for a walk. Even though it's not a food decision, but it affects your eating. So this is a funny thing, is that even things like that, if I am stressed, I'm going to do this to de-stress, and now suddenly you're back on track and you're thinking clearly. If it affects your eating, I need you to look into it as well. Set implementation intentions for if then for where you derail, okay? And the last one is track a metric daily. I don't care what it is, if it's protein, if it's calories, if it's macros, if it's your weight, make sure you're tracking at least one. If you're tracking more, even better, okay? But just make sure you're tracking something. And as always, it's the overarching theme is how do we make sure, in terms of weight loss, if that's what you're trying to do, we need to increase protein and veg and reduce carbs and fats. That is the kind of overarching theme of what all of this is trying to do to reduce the calorie amount you're eating and make sure you're having enough protein and enough fiber, okay? Amongst other things. Now, we've been over a lot of stuff here. If you have any questions about the hand portion guideline resources, or about knowing how much protein you should be eating, or about knowing calorie density info, or restaurants that you can go to, like restaurant options, we've got info on all of that. So just flick us a message at prolificfitness.co on Instagram, so at prolificfitness.co. on Instagram, ask us questions. I also would love to hear your feedback on what you think of these episodes, or if there's any other topics that you would love to hear. That kind of feedback is so helpful for us. For example, for next week, I'm actually very excited. It's an amazing episode. I say next week, hopefully I'll get to it sooner than, a week away from now, but we're going to go into spiraling, because this is one of the clients asked me, how do you catch a downward spiral, and how do you manufacture a positive upward spiral? And these are things that can be sorted. You can get on top of downward spirals. You can get on top of upward spirals. So the idea of how to catch the right kind of momentum, we will be talking about that in the next episode. I appreciate you being here. As always, here at Prolific Fitness, our goal is to help people create life-changing body transformations. That's what this podcast is all about. The Change Room, if you have any questions, I'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, I can't wait to see you on the next one.
Hit the change room. We're about to level up.